Learn the skills of critical thinking here today on Jimmy Rants. I promise it'll be a good thing. Come on over to jimmyrants.com, and we do engage live right here Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time on the Instagram page for Jimmy Rants. It is at Jimmy Rants, so go follow me over there. We have a great time Monday through Friday with this show at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. We also simulcast live over on my Facebook page as well as over on Twitch. If you're brand new to Twitch, Twitch is an app you can download to your device. And then once you're there, go follow Jimmy More Rants. Somebody else had Jimmy Rants. Had nothing to do with anything I do. So go Jimmy More Rants and you'll be able to find it over there. Just like Anna, who just popped in to say happy Thursday. If you missed the live, you can watch it on the replay right here on the Jimmy Rants Instagram page. It'll be on IGTV just as soon as this is over. We also have it on replay over on Twitch, so another reason to download the app. You can watch it on demand if you missed the live. And also all the past episodes you can find at jimmyrants.com. Still locked out of YouTube until Saturday. On Saturday, I will be uploading all of these videos from Jimmy Rants all week long. And so speaking of YouTube, today is Thursday, and Thursday is my podcast called Real Talk. And so I have a brand new episode of an interview with Drew Manning. So if you don't know Drew is the guy that came up with the fit to fat to fit concept. Right at about a decade ago, I interviewed him about that. And it was where he was a personal trainer trying to have more empathy for his clients. So he said, okay, I will purposely gain weight and then lose it with you to basically say, hey, I'm alongside you with this. So he decided to do it again this year, and he gained something about 65 pounds in 4 months, eating a bunch of junk food. And now he is in the midst of taking that off. So I interviewed him about his second journey. So if you want to watch that interview in video format, I've got it on the on my YouTube channel if you want to go check it out there. It's also on the IGTV for Living Low Carb Man, my main Instagram page. And then it will air on the Real Talk podcast. So if you prefer to listen to podcasts, it will be on the Real Talk podcast today. And you can access that wherever you listen to podcasts. And what I did was I pulled the old episode from a decade ago. We're airing that first, followed right by the brand new episode. So you can kind of hear the changes that have happened in him. And there's been quite a few since that first interview 10 years ago. But today, you guys, I have a really cool topic that I think more than ever before in our culture, we need this very topic. You might have noticed that there's a bit of rancor when you go online and try to have conversations with people. Not even trying to have any kind of argument, but just simply talking things out, sharing information, and then inquiring with others about information that they share. Like literally this exchange of ideas is how you grow your knowledge. It's how you basically have your brain come to conclusions about what you believe about things. And so what has happened though, is you got a lot of rank amateurs trying to talk to each other online. And I say that with all love and respect. Most people don't know how to talk to each other. Now that seems so weird. What do you mean? They talk to each other all the time. No, they shout their position and they denounce you if you have a position that has anything other than what they believe in it. That's not having conversation. That's not really anything except your way or the highway. And I would even say that if you only get one side of things and you can't even entertain another position, that's propaganda. And there's a lot of people who have fallen prey to propaganda techniques. And so today here on Jimmy Rants, if you're just joining us, we're going to do a class in critical thinking skills. I'm calling it Critical Thinking 101. And I'm going to teach you from this article that I found all about how to develop critical thinking skills. I'm gonna teach you how to do it because, quite frankly, most of us grew up in an era, at least my age and younger, where you didn't really have it taught. I remember being a kid of the 80s. I wasn't discouraged from asking questions, but there certainly was not this push to try to get you to critically think. It was almost like, all right, here's the information. Now you regurgitate it back to me. Good, you get an A on the test, move on. And that was kind of the way things were, and it's even worse now. Maybe the age of my parents, which is over 70, maybe they got a little bit better taught this, but it seems in this day and age, a lot of adults came into adulthood without ever developing this key skill that I think is a key life skill that everyone needs to have. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. This article I have defines what critical thinking is. It gives some examples of it, and I will certainly infuse some examples and get you to provide some as well. And then how to improve your critical thinking skills. This is probably going to be the most practical Jimmy Rants I've ever done, so please share this far and wide. When it's over on Facebook, you can share it now on any of the pages that you're a part of, including your own page. Definitely share the IGTV when we're done here. And then you can grab the link to the Twitch and share it all over the internet as well. All right, let's get into this. Why is critical thinking so important? First of all, everyone seeks it. Employers, people that want to have a conversation intellectually, everybody wants critical thinking. Also, we live in an era where there's a lot of falsities out there in the news. There's also data that contrasts, like one day they tell you masks work, the next day masks don't work. And there's so much information you have to process on a daily basis. Think about pre-internet, what it was like to process information. You read a few newspapers and then you discussed the issues of the day. Now you've got not just those newspapers, but websites, you've got videos, you've got social media pages. You've got so much to pour through that if you're looking for a point of view, you can find it. No matter what the point of view is, you will find that point of view. And it's easy to have yourself go down this rabbit hole of confirmation bias of only looking at things that reinforce what you always believe and already believe. I want to push you today with this critical thinking exercise. I want to push you to look at things that you don't agree with. I make myself do that as an exercise as well. It's very easy to be comfortable having people that basically echo what you already believe, but push yourself to be challenged. Critical thinking is the only way to make any sense in this world. So what we will show you in this post today is the best definition of critical thinking skills, how to use them step by step, which we'll get into in a minute, a list of the most important critical thinking skills for the workplace, and then tools and ideas for how to improve your skill. So if you're ready for all that, here we go, you guys. Before we jump into defining what critical thinking skills are, let's do a quick experiment. So let your mind wander into this area of this particular subject and see if you can start to critically think about this. So the topic is, we want to know, is drinking coffee good for you? That's a common kind of thing that people debate and think about. So what would you do if you were trying to critically think that? First, you would go do a search. Reasons not to drink coffee. Because you want to see, okay, is there any contraindication to drinking coffee? Maybe I'll find an article that says, okay, here's why it could be a bad idea. So when you start looking things up, you see all kinds of things. Oh, if you drink coffee, you'll decrease your anxiety. You'll have healthier teeth. You'll even lose weight and have a healthier heart. If you go right now, do a search for reasons not to drink coffee. All of that comes up in the search. So then you say, well, I guess that means if I drink coffee, all that'll happen. I'll just drink coffee all the time. Like, you could come to that conclusion. Are you critically thinking? Not quite. How about reasons not to drink coffee? All those were reasons to drink coffee. How about reasons not to drink coffee? If If you look that up, you'll see, or sorry, I did it backwards. The previous was not, this is 2. If you drink coffee, you'll have lower rates of depression, you'll boost your memory, you'll have greater longevity, and just like the other one said the opposite, you'll have a healthier heart. So then you might be going, well, wait a minute. Now I'm getting conflicting information on the same subject. So what do you do with that? This is where critical thinking skills come into play. These are not some random unsupported online websites, which a lot of people, you know these people in your life who will send you one link. There's no other link on the internet, but one link to something they heard about that they're so sure about. And that's it. There's no cooperation. But every one of these in this example here, they're legit peer-reviewed research that will back up their findings. So what do you do then? How do you reconcile those contradictory claims when there's science behind both? I would even parse out the science. Is the science a randomized controlled clinical trial? Or is it just an observational study or some epidemiological study where you're looking at a lot of studies and coming to some common conclusion? That matters as well. So what critical thinking says is, okay, seemingly opposite positions both being argued for, let's dig even deeper and see if we can parse this out even more. So you reconcile the contradictory claims by using critical thinking. So now let's define critical thinking. Critical thinking is the ability to think in an organized and rational manner. Who among you think critically under that definition? You think in an organized and rational manner. I would add the word, it's not in their definition, but I would add the word in objective. Are you someone who's willing, no matter what your preconceived notions are, no matter what you believe personally, can you remain objective in a conversation? Meaning, you're not really rah-rah one way or the other, but you're seeing both sides simultaneously. That is an extremely hard skill to do in this day and age when people want to put you in an extreme box, one or the other. And it's so funny because in my writing, I'm very careful to try to be objective. And I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's going to take some work. And even sometimes when your best of intentions of being objective, you still have people who will misinterpret or read into something you wrote. Well, because you wrote that, therefore you're, and then they go right to an extreme. And it's no, you can talk about issues without taking the two extremes of a position. And this is part of why we get into trouble these days, you guys. People, they hear you say something and they automatically look at that, assimilate it in their head, and they're, you're this way or you're that way. There is no room for kind of a discussion in the middle. So if you're just joining us, we're talking about critical thinking. We're doing a bit of a class today, Critical Thinking Skills 101. I called it AKA How Not to Get Propagandized because a lot of people are. And they just buy things at face value without really thinking. So critical thinking, the ability to think in an organized and rational manner. And why do you do that? In order to understand connections between ideas and or facts. What this does is it helps you decide, what do you actually believe in? In other words, it's thinking about thinking. So what you want to do is identify, analyze, and then fix the flaws in the way we think. How many of you would describe yourself as a critical thinker based on that definition? It's a rare trait, and I admire anybody who can exhibit this, especially in a public forum. It can be very difficult to show critical thinking skills because you're going to have so many people not exhibit those that you're going to stand out like a sore thumb, and they're going to wonder why you're not getting up in arms about whatever topic is being discussed. So they list here in this article how to be a critical thinker. To become one, it takes lots of time, lots of practice, and lots of patience. But something you can start doing right now, today. That's why I'm doing this Jimmy Rants today. All of us can be better for one another. You can do right now to improve your critical thinking skills is apply the 7 steps of critical thinking to any problem or any issue that comes up in your life. Either at work, in everyday life, on social media, doesn't matter. If there's a topic, you can use these 7 steps to work your way through it in a critical thinking manner. So you guys ready for this? This is solid gold. If you've never heard of how to use your noggin and go through life kind of critical thinking, these are questions to help you go through the steps. All right, step number 1 of critical thinking. Identify what the problem is or what the question is. Be as precise as possible when you identify it. The narrower the issue, the easier it is to find solutions or answers. And is that ever right? I think sometimes we neglect that sometimes there's such broadness, such generality to things that are discussed, that if you don't bring in every little angle to that general question or general idea, you're going to have people have knee-jerk reactions because they're going to see it from one angle of things. You're going to see it from another angle of things, and you're trying to have a conversation and critically think each other. You can't if you're not both looking at the same thing. So try to narrow the scope of what it is exactly you're talking about. I could easily say, keto is healthy. So there will be a certain segment of people that'll say, yeah, keto is healthy. And I have this to prove it. I've lost weight, I've lowered my blood pressure, and lower my blood sugar and insulin levels, And then somebody else that had a bad experience with keto and had other issues like what I talked about yesterday, all those people with that Hollywood actress calling out keto, all those people had bad reactions. Oh, keto's not healthy. I got pancreatitis. I had this and that and this and that. And they just go through all the reasons why it's not healthy. Now, what happened there? You didn't identify the problem or question precisely. You didn't get to the nitty-gritty. So in discussions of ideas, part of the key to critical thinking is narrow in really tightly on those very specific things that you have knowledge about, that you're creating an opinion or sharing information about. The broader it is, the more openness there is to misunderstanding and conflict and not having a good productive discussion. Does that make sense? So that's the first one in the steps of critical thinking. We have 7 to get through. Number 2, gather data, opinions, and arguments. Try to seek out several different sources that present different ideas and points of view. So there is this thing in debate class, if you ever take debate class, where they identify what your position is on a variety of issues. And so let's just say you're pro-life when on the topic of abortion, for example. And so if you take the position of pro-life in a debate class, the teacher might say, okay, Mr. Pro-life, go and defend pro-choice. That's a difficult thing. Now, I know people in my life who can argue both sides of issues. They are very good critical thinkers. And so when you know the positions of both sides, it makes you a little more understanding and a little less rah-rah one way or the other when you do look at both sides. And so look at things from both angles of issues. Don't just say, well, keto saved my life and so it would save everybody's life. Okay. Yes, that's one position. It can save your life and it's done remarkable things. But acknowledge where people say that it didn't work as well and try to dig into that a little more, learn what their issues were. Maybe it comes down to what you're calling keto is one thing and what they're calling keto is another thing. And then it just becomes this misunderstanding. But it took critical thinking to dig deeper to find out what the data is, what the opinions are, and what the arguments are. So that's number 2. So number 1, identify the problem or question. This is the key steps to critical thinking. Number 2, gather data, opinions, and arguments. Number 3, here's where you get into the nitty-gritty. You analyze and evaluate all the data. So the sources of the information you're providing, are they reliable? Are they known to be well sourced? Are their conclusions data backed, or is it an opinion piece offering an argumentative statement? Is there enough information or data to support any given hypothesis? So this is where you really kind of dig into your thinking, because it's easy to read something, and I've done some Jimmy Rants before, where most people read a headline, and rather than going and digging deeper and trying to learn if it's true or not, their first inclination when you read a news headline, and I would extend this to when you hear something on a podcast, when you read about it online somewhere, when you watch it on a YouTube video, your first inclination is to just believe it. It is, especially if it's something that confirms somewhat of something you already believed, and you're apt to believe it without doing the research. And so analyze, evaluate, look things up. Don't just buy things at face value. Even if you think they're true, always look it up. Number 4, try to identify any assumptions you are making. Are you sure the sources that you found are unbiased? Can I tell you, nowadays it's incredibly difficult trying to find unbiased, just factual websites sharing information. Even the mainstream news sites infuse so much opinion and editorialism into their news. It's hard to know what's real or not. Are you sure you weren't biased in your search for the answers? Sometimes the way you search for things can also feed into your own built-in bias. So back to the keto example. If you look up, is keto healthy? You're going to find a lot of articles that'll say, yeah, keto's healthy. You'll find a lot of articles that say, no, keto's not healthy. So then that's where you kind of kick in. All right, where are they coming from both sides? Don't just believe the is keto healthy when it's a positive one because that's the way you believe. Challenge your thinking. Go to the ones that are negative and see what their arguments are. See what they're saying. See if those arguments have merit or if they're just based on opinion. Number 5, establish significance. What information is most important in what you're finding? Is the sample size of what's being looked at sufficient? And are all opinions and arguments even relevant to this problem that you're trying to solve? All of these are good questions. I hope you're paying close attention to this, because these are the questions you ask yourself as you're critically thinking, as you're trying to get to the root of the matter of what is true, which is what critical thinking is trying to do, is kind of get you to truth, or at least as close to truth that you believe is most accurate as possible. Number 6, make a decision and reach a conclusion. So after you've done all of that analysis of identifying the problem or question, gathering up data, opinions, and arguments from a variety of sources, analyzing all that data, evaluating it, making sure it's all on the up and up, identifying any kind of preconceived personal biases that you might have that might make you make assumptions about what you've seen, establishing whether it's legit sources and the significance of everything that you've been looking at. Now you got to come to some kind of a conclusion. Identify various conclusions that could be possible based on what you've read, and then decide which, if any of them, are sufficiently supported. Weigh the strengths and weaknesses of all the possible options. So what might happen is, in that critical analysis of all the data, rather than being jaded by one side's position, you look at one side, you look at the other side, and you may find there's somewhat of a hybrid in the middle, that some on this side would go, nope, that's not true. Some on this side would say, nope, that's not true. But it's a consensus of the two viewpoints that you now have come to the conclusion makes the most sense. Oh, the online world hates people like that because they want to put you in a box of one or the other. But when you ride in the middle, and this is kind of what critical thinking does too, is it pushes you to kind of that center position so you don't become so extremist that you actually are promoting propaganda if you're on one side or the other. The truth is usually right here. It's not usually found on the extremes. And then the last one, present and communicate your position. Once you've reached a conclusion, you've made your decision, present it for the whole world to see. That's where the rubber meets the road. And I've had this happen to me where I have presented what I think is a pretty objective kind of position on subjects that I write about. And I will have people on one side of the issue say, well, you don't understand, it's this and this and this, and then they'll kind of come at me because of that. And then the other side, same thing. Well, you don't understand this and this and this, and then they'll attack me. And it's like, okay, when both sides are pissed off at what you conclude, you're probably closer to the truth than not. And this is the power of critical thinking. You're not going to be popular when you critically think. Popularity is not your goal in critical thinking. Critical thinking is about getting to the truth. And the truth, again, is not usually seen in the extreme positions. It's somewhere here in the middle. So let's go back to the coffee example. Remember earlier I talked about the is coffee healthy example. So let's examine it using these skills that we just learned. The problem in question is drinking coffee good for you? And as I noted earlier, that's way too broad of a question. What does good mean? We don't even know if we're talking about long or short-term effects of drinking coffee. It's also possible that drinking coffee might benefit some aspect of your health while also harming other aspects of your health. So what you do with the question is you narrow it down. Is drinking coffee good for your heart? Now, if you ask that question, that's a different, more narrowly focused question. So, you'll recall I noted there were 2 pieces of research on the impact of drinking coffee on your heart. The first one suggested that drinking coffee could account for premature death in the region of 14% for coronary heart disease, 20% for stroke. But in the second source of information, it says moderate coffee consumption was associated with a lower prevalence of the coronary artery disease. So the problem is both of these studies are observational studies. They're not randomized controlled trials. So we don't really have hard evidence one way or the other. We also did not source enough if you're going to make some kind of a conclusion. You can't just get one article on one side, one article on the other side, and that be it. Try to find as many sources as you can, because when you have more sources, then that's when clarity of mind, this critical thinking kicks in. We also haven't taken into account that the heart is a very complex organ. Just like in the case with the rest of the body, coffee might be good for some functions of the heart and bad for other functions. I have had studies come across that I look at where in some people, coffee can raise your insulin levels. I've seen that. I've seen where drinking coffee can raise your triglyceride levels. So there's little confounding variables like that, but it's not in all people. And so I think a lot of times when we're regurgitating information, we personalize it so much to what our experience is, not thinking through the ramifications that what we experience is not what everybody experiences. This is why I don't like the whole diet industry of, oh, I went on blank, or I took this blank supplement and I had blank happen to me. Well, good for you. That happened to you. Doesn't mean it's going to happen for someone else. Both articles cited also appeared in prestigious peer-reviewed journals. That doesn't always mean anything, because if they're not randomized controlled clinical trials, that doesn't really confirm. So the first one was based on literature review only, so that was an observational study. The second one conducted in a large population, 25,000 participants. And watching Jimmy Rants, when it's that big of a number, they're not actually putting them through a randomized controlled trial. That too is an observational study. It only included men and women from Korea, peoples whose hearts can be affected by other factors other than diet and climate. Number 4, while the 2 sources of the is drinking coffee healthy appear biased or don't appear biased, we were in our analysis. So in this article, they said we based our initial search on assumptions. Reasons not to drink coffee. We just assumed it was bad for you. And reasons to drink coffee. Coffee is worth drinking. Those are both assumptions that were made even in the research of this. So critical thinking is going to make you go outside the realm of what your natural inclination to believe is, and even flip it to the opposite view. The search algorithms made sure we found exactly the articles that were in line with our assumptions. So, considering all the above, we can positively state that the information we gathered was not significant for solving the stated problem initially. Is coffee healthy? Good for you. The only conclusion that we can reach based on this, using critical thinking skills, is according to the data we got, drinking coffee might or might not be good for you and your heart, depending on a lot of factors and variables that we failed to take into account. Even if the conclusion is the question can't be answered right now, it's still worth sharing that. And which is oftentimes what happens in studies, for example. They'll go through a whole study, they'll come up with their conclusion at the end, and then usually at the very end, this is only a limited scope of what we're able to conclude here today. More research is needed. So that's kind of the way they use critical thinking within the research realm, is they throw that line in there at the end. Now, it makes people like me and others that want some certainty a little bit upset. It's like, okay, well, do that research then. Don't just say more research is needed. Do that research. But it's a good conclusion to say, we just don't know enough. We don't have enough information. So the point is, it's really hard to be absolutely sure of anything. Keep that in mind in your online discussions with people. If someone is very, very sure of themselves, you can almost guarantee that they've been propagandized to one side of a position or another. But when you see people having discussions over the nuances of even controversial issues, when you see that happening, get engaged in that. Don't get engaged in the absolutism of one way or the other, and people are so sure of themselves. Try to hang out in the middle and see where the truth is. Because remember, one side or the other is not usually the truth. The truth is somewhere usually in that center position. Critical thinking skills are necessary for us to accept the flaws in our own reasoning and the gaps in our own knowledge. So take advantage of that. I fight it every single day because I'm a presenter of information. I communicate here on Jimmy Rants. I do present very absolute information sometimes just to kind of put a position out there. And I always welcome pushback. People are like, well, you're so sure of yourself. No, I speak for a living, so I come across as sure of myself. But part of that as a communicator is I'm trying to evoke critical thinking in you. If I say something you don't agree with, I want you to push back and let's have the conversation. I think sometimes people are afraid to push back on someone with a certain position because the norm is they get yelled at, they get ridiculed, and all the rest. And that's not my style. My style is I welcome pushback. In fact, yesterday on my Instagram stories, I put out a call. Do you disagree with me about something? What is it and why? And I've already gotten a few things that have come out. So what I want to do, and I'm inviting all of you guys here today as well, write to me through the various mediums. Instagram's the easiest way. Just send me a DM on Instagram at Living Low Carb Man or at Jimmy Rants. And tell me some position I have taken that you disagree with. Somebody just wrote yesterday a DM and said, hey, I don't like that you tell people that masks don't work or that they're not as effective. Wonderful. And then she went into a long list of reasons why she thinks they do, So what I'm doing is I've got a Jimmy Rants planned, probably next week if I can get enough people to participate in this. I've got a Jimmy Rants plan where we're going to look at all the ways people disagree with me, and I'm going to show how you have a rational conversation with someone about things that they disagree with you about, because we've equated disagreeeness on topics with disagreeability, and it becomes personal and ugly. And for the record, I did a post a couple days ago on my social media and on Instagram on the at Living Low Carb Man page. I ended up losing 650 followers. What did I do? I simply stated my position that we need to come together as Americans, and we can do better, and and I put a thank you, Mr. President, and a picture of Donald Trump. Well, I know what instigated people to have that knee-jerk reaction to unfollow, but the point of the article that I wrote was, look, we need to unify. We need to come together. We got to be better for one another. We got to get away from this vitriol. But still, none of that mattered because those people weren't critically thinking. Those people were letting emotion overtake them. And this is part of why critical thinking is lost as well. When you allow your emotions to let you think, that to be your ability to think is just emotionally and what you feel in the moment, you're never going to make an intelligent conversation. You're never going to convince anybody of anything doing that. So critical thinking, and I often will say this, take the emotion out of it, because people with the V word for 9-1 DIVOC. Oh my God, I can't believe you're discouraging people away. You're horrible. You're responsible for 400,000 people dying. And I'm going, take the emotion out of it. Have a rational discussion with me. I'm more than happy. More times than not, those people have had someone die in their life or someone get very sick, and so they take it very personally and they're feeling. I always say, take the emotion out of it and have a rational discussion with me, because you can't have rational discussions if you're overwhelmed by feelings and emotions. Critical thinking can't have the monkey wrench of feelings and emotions in it either. Just realize that. So why are critical thinking skills so important? When you think critically, you constantly challenge what you think is a given. You know how many people walk around thinking things are a given? It's a bunch. You know what scientists do, at least ethical ones that live by the scientific method? They are constantly challenging what they think they know. So we all need to have more of a scientist mentality as we go through life. In your job, even if something appears to be working well, critical thinking will help you try and identify new and even better solutions. Critical thinking skills are the very cornerstone of self-development and improvement. That's why they're so critical to have in today's society. You take away critical thinking, you take away innovation, you take away expanding your knowledge base, you take away wisdom of what not to do, you take away lots of things that are so essential in our livelihood. There was a report that revealed 93% of employers value critical thinking over someone having a degree. Isn't that interesting? They don't care if you have a degree. You know how many people have degrees? And I have 2 of them. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and English, and I have a Master of Arts in Public Policy. Those in and of themselves do not replace critical thinking. Critical thinking is a much more applicable skill. So, here are some of the skills, especially if you're ever looking for a job, you can put these on your resume. Top critical thinking skills. Analysis. If you're a critical thinker, you have great analysis skills. The ability to collect, process information, and then secure it in your brain as knowledge. You can also interpret, concluding what the meaning of the information is. You can also infer things, assessing whether the knowledge you have is sufficient or reliable. You can also evaluate, which is the ability to make decisions based on the available information. You can explain things, communicating your findings and doing it in a reasonable and clear manner. You can self-regulate, the drive to constantly monitor and correct your way of thinking. I've had that happen many times over the years, me talking about low-carb diets. Open-mindedness. If anything critical thinking does, is it makes you be a lot more open-minded than probably you've ever been. The people that scare me the most are the ones that are so sure of themselves. They're not open-minded at all. They don't want to hear anything but their own idea. And if you run against their idea, the first inclination is to call you names and to try to vilify you, not your idea, you. Take into account all the possibilities and the point of view. That's open-mindedness. And then the last one, problem solving. The ability to tackle unexpected problems and resolve resolve conflicts. So if you just have these raw list of skills, it's pretty useless. So if you're applying for a job and it requires you to have critical thinking skills, you can't just dump random entries from that list that I just read off on your resume. You need to prove it. You need to show in real life examples of how you have used those skills. So again, this is from a job website. So they're trying to help people use critical thinking and help them get a job. So in the examples they have here, for someone applying to be a nurse, evaluated and analyzed cases at hand to determine the priority of treatment of my patients, clearly communicated and explained my rationale to doctors and other members. That's pretty good, and it looks strong. How about for an engineer? I identified 8 major hidden design defects with failed constructions. Engineers are natural critical thinkers. Like literally they question everything. It's just in your DNA to question. That's what engineers do. How about in the customer service field? Interpreted the results of a phone survey to develop a new strategy about how to handle customer complaints. So show them how you use critical skills. Don't just tell them, oh yeah, I've got critical thinking skills. Here they are. No, show them how you've used them. They might also be evaluated during an interview for a job. They want to see examples of how you've done that. Okay, so here are some interesting critical thinking interview questions and answers. See if it kind of triggers anything in you. So one question that might be asked, describe a situation where you challenged the way you and your colleagues did their jobs. So then the answer might be our online ordering page let clients order incompatible components, causing lots of complaints. I asked if we could put together a product check in place. The software engineer added in warnings when 2 were not compatible. Immediately, the complaints went down by 35%. So that's somebody who used critical thinking skills, analyzed the situation, and came up with a solution. So the answer shows they're very good at regulating themselves, and they're good and quick problem solvers. Number 2, describe a situation where you saw a problem and took steps to fix it. So in this example, our rechargeable forklifts had 2 different plugs. If you used the wrong one, you would wreck the $3,500 battery. So I added zip ties as cord shorteners so you could only use the right outlet. We haven't lost any batteries since. So this shows you got good evaluation skills and problem solving and common sense. Like he thought that through. What's the end result? Number 3, tell me about a time you had to persuade someone to see your side of things. So the answer, the owner was convinced our gift shop was a moneymaker. I analyzed cash flow, found that it was running at 10% deficit. I built in data visualizations that showed we could actually increase store revenue by 40% by focusing on the most popular products in the store. So this showed analysis, interpretation, and explanation. So you see how critical thinking in real world situations comes in handy when you're trying to demonstrate your skills that you possess. So maybe right now you don't think you've got the skills to be a critical thinker. Don't worry about that. There's easy ways to improve that, and you can actually start right now. So how do you improve it? Number 1, start asking simple critical thinking questions. So think about these whenever you come into a situation. Start asking, what do I know about that issue? Do I already have knowledge? Okay. How do I know what I know is true? What am I trying to prove with my knowledge of this situation? And then what are the motivations for having that knowledge? You see how this questions yourself on what you believe and why you believe it? I think that's important with everything that you do. Constantly question yourself. Number 2, go against common sense. The problem with common sense is it's just common. No way this business idea can ever be profitable. Well, why not? Others show that it can be. So if others can do it, why can't you? So oppose what's common sense. Number 3, be aware of your biases. The most common cognitive bias you need to avoid is confirmation bias, where you subconsciously just assume your position is the right one. Action bias. You act too quickly before thinking it through that maybe it's something else. Association bias. Why did the rain dance always work? Because they danced until the rain came. That's why the rain dance happened. Maybe association bias also happens because you have respect for somebody you hear or watch or listen to, and if they said it, you just believe it because of the association with that person. Number 4, read a lot. This will not only help develop your critical thinking skills, but actually most skills you can think of. So just read, and read some more. And I would say read books about critical thinking. Sometimes that will be helpful as well. So the key takeaway in this post, and then I'm going to come to you guys next. The key critical thinking skills are analysis, interpretation, inference, explanation, self-regulation, open-mindedness, and problem solving. And in order to apply the basic principles of critical thinking, follow these 3 steps. Identify what the problem is, gather data, analyze and evaluate, identify assumptions, establish significance, make decisions, and then communicate it. So to become a better critical thinker, you need to ask simple questions, challenge assumptions that people are making, be aware that you might be making assumptions and have your own biases, and then continue to read more. I hope this episode of Jimmy Rants teaching you about critical thinking was educational. Maybe you learned a few things. The bottom line is we need more people critically thinking now more than ever before. The moment you stop critically thinking is the moment you can succumb to propaganda, the moment that you can succumb to being heavily influenced by people who may not have critical thinking in mind at all. They want to indoctrinize you. They want to propagandize you. And the antithesis to indoctrination and propaganda is critical thinking. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. We're going to go here first to Instagram, then over to Facebook, finally over to Twitch. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. See what you have to say about this one. Cariana says, the evidence is strong that coffee is outstanding for your liver. Well, that's an assumption that you have. And in a debate of ideas using critical thinking, you will challenge that assumption. So that's cool. It's what you know based on whatever. And so go and challenge it. And if it still holds up, great. After an analysis of all the information. But this is what gets people into trouble. Not saying that what you're saying is wrong. I'm just saying using critical thinking skills, that's a very definitive, declarative statement. Now challenge it. Even yourself, challenge it. That's what you believe. Now back up. Why do you believe it? What did you do to come to that conclusion? Did you read some randomized controlled clinical trials? Did you see any trials that said the opposite of that? So thank you for that, though. All right, thank you, Instagram. We're going to go over here now to Facebook, and we'll be over here to Twitch here in a second. What's up, Facebook? See, you guys are quiet on me today. I don't know if this was just instructive and you're just not wanting to engage, but critical thinking, like, push back on what I'm saying here. Do you think critical thinking is bunk, or is it something worth pursuing? Or maybe you're just going, wow, I never heard about this before. Whatever the reaction, come on, talk to me a little bit. Twitch is talking to me. What's up, guys? Just a reminder, download the Twitch app, you guys. And then follow Jimmy Moore Rants over on Twitch. Marcus says, those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. Voltaire said that. You always got the wise quotes for me, Marcus. I appreciate that. But yeah, how true that is. And it's those people that believe absurdity that aren't critically thinking. Even like at face value, if something seems absurd, you should question it automatically rather than just believing it. Researchers always conclude studies with more research is needed. That's job security. Well, that's true, especially if they're the ones doing the research. But that's true. They're looking for more funding for future studies. Cariana says, the word for these people who don't critically think and only think one way or the other is zealot. The so sure of themselves ones, and they can be dangerous. Yeah, zealots on either side. They're not helping matters. They're not continuing a conversation. Zealots only further the divide. So if we have division in any conversation, it's because the zealots have taken over the discussion. This is where critical thinkers need to push things to the middle. And I've got people that engage in my work. I can tell the zealots and I can tell the critical thinkers. And sometimes those critical thinkers, I'll read what they say and I go, wow, okay, now I get where it's coming from. Because sometimes we see such black and white in our society, we don't see the nuance that's in the middle. All right, thank you, Twitch. Critical thinking and questioning everything is important, says Lachey. It is. It is. It's why I wanted to do this Jimmy Rants today, because I don't think we have near enough people exercising this skill. Sherry says, I think this is a very important subject. Well, now you know why Jimmy brought it to you here today on Jimmy Rants. And that's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you can engage live in the content. Come follow me right here over at the Jimmy Rants Instagram page. We do go live Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time. So thank you so much for being here today. We also simulcast live on my Facebook page as well as on the Twitch app. Remember, Twitch app, download it to your device. Follow Jimmy Moore Rants. If you missed the live, you can watch it on the replay on IGTV at the Jimmy Rants Instagram page. It's also up over at Twitch. Just as soon as this is over, you can watch the replay. Too bad, so sad. YouTube is still out until Saturday, still on the ban list for 1 week. So Saturday, I will be uploading a whole bunch of Jimmy Rants from this week to YouTube. So that's when you'll be able to see them there. And then, of course, JimmyRants.com, the official website for how you can access this show. And just a reminder, today is my show, Real Talk, the podcast. It airs on Thursdays. I have the video form of it up on YouTube if you want to go check it out. It's also up on my IGTV on my Livin' Low Carb Man page on Instagram. And then, of course, it's at the Real Talk podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, or at llvlc.com. Drew Manning is my guest today, the Fit to Fat to Fit guy. He recently turned 40 years old, and he purposely gained 65 pounds, took away his six-pack abs, gained 65 pounds, and now he's in the process of trying to get fit again. So fit to fat to fit, to be more empathetic with his clientele. So I think it's a crazy idea, but a pretty cool idea. And Drew's one of the nicest guys in the world. So definitely go check that out today if you get a chance. And tomorrow is my favorite show of the week. It's Ask Me Anything. So get ready to have lots of questions for me tomorrow. And so until then, we'll see you then.